Okay, so UK is clapping back. The UK will remain a secular state, and the issue of Sharia law will be laid to rest. But before we talk about it, let's see how the reading went in Parliament.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision about freedom of expression in relation to religion or belief systems and for connected purposes. Madam Deputy Speaker, I do not believe that Muhammad was a prophet sent by God. I do not accept the instructions he said he received from the Archangel Gabriel. I do not accept that the sunnah, or body of Islamic laws, has any relevance to me. I respect the religious beliefs of others, but I do not mind if Muhammad is satirised, criticised or mocked. I'm not a Muslim, and I choose not to live by the moral codes set out by Islam. I'm a Christian, and I should make clear that I don't think anybody should be prosecuted for satirising, criticising or mocking Jesus either. England and Wales abolished blasphemy laws in 2008, and Scotland abolished them in 2021. But even then, those laws had not been used for decades. The last blasphemy trial took place in 1977, and the state hasn't brought a public prosecution for blasphemy in more than a century. But now blasphemy laws are back. I've been advised not to refer to two high-profile cases of people being arrested, charged and prosecuted for causing harassment, alarm or distress to Muslims or even nonsensically to Islam itself. So while I will keep my speech to the conceptual, I invite the House to recall that there are real examples of what I raise in the criminal justice system right now. The issue is the way sections 4 and 5 of the Public Order Act 1986 are being used, far beyond the intent of Parliament, to police what we can and cannot say about Islam. I will come to the details of sections 4 and 5, but first I want to say something about the intent of the Public Order Act. The long title of the Act makes clear its purpose was to abolish some common law and statutory offences to make way for new offences relating to public order. Nowhere in the second reading debate from 1986 did anybody raise the need to protect religions or followers of religions from offence. The context of the Act was football hooliganism and the riots in Brixton and Broadwater Farm. It's true that Part 3 of the Act created new offences relating to racial hatred, and this was amended to include religious hatred by the Racial and Religious Hatred Act 2006. But in Part 3, in Section 29J, to which we will return, the Public Order Act says, "Nothing in this part shall be read or given effect in a way which prohibits or restricts discussion, criticism or expressions of antipathy, dislike, ridicule, insult or abuse of particular religions or the beliefs or practices of their adherents." We can therefore be confident that the Public Order Act, even as amended, was never intended to become a blasphemy law. This obvious conclusion is reinforced by the fact that the controversies regarding blasphemy and Islam in this country began 2 years after its introduction, in 1988, with the publication of the Satanic Verses. Since that year, and the protests and fatwa against Sir Salman Rushdie, our public conversation about Islam has been limited through a mixture of self-censorship and more official restrictions, such as the definition of Islamophobia accepted by many public bodies. These restrictions are motivated not by a desire to avoid offence, consider the criticism and mockery made of other religions, but fear of a violent response by those who are offended. Some say public order offences are not the same as a blasphemy law, and that it can be legitimate to prosecute somebody for saying something that might cause wider disorder. Perhaps in some circumstances this may be so, but we should interrogate this line of thinking. First, the Crown Prosecution Service gave the game away by charging one man with causing distress to the religious institution of Islam, which is pretty much the dictionary definition of blasphemy. But second, twisting the law to make a protester responsible for the violent reaction of those who will not tolerate the opinions of others is wrong. It destroys our freedom of speech. Some argue that while this may be regrettable, it's now an unavoidable consequence of the multicultural society in which we live today. By this logic, the state must police the boundaries between different ethnic and religious groups to avoid disorder. But we should be clear that this means state intrusion and a loss of liberty on some occasions, and mob rule on others. This is the very essence of the two-tier policing row we have seen recently. Rough justice for those belonging to identity groups that play by the rules, and freedom from justice for those belonging to groups willing to take to the streets and threaten violence. This is the logic of using the Public Order Act to prohibit us from saying what we like about a religion. A person may be found guilty because of the violent reaction of those offended by their actions. From Sir Salman Rushdie to the Batley teacher still in hiding with his family, the threat of violence is what lies behind these new blasphemy laws. Perhaps we should not be surprised. There are at least 14 Muslim-majority countries where the penalty for blasphemy or apostasy is death, and we have significant diaspora populations from many of them. With the number of people coming here, with the number of people here who came from these countries growing, and the increasing assertiveness of organised political Islam in Britain, this is a problem that seems likely to only get more severe. But the answer is not to surrender to the mob. It is to hold the line, and that is why today I bring forward this bill. Madam Deputy Speaker, I said earlier that Section 29J of the Public Order Act protects criticism, insult, and even abuse of religions and the beliefs and practices of their adherents. But this only applies to Part 3 of the legislation, because Part 3 introduced offences relating to racial hatred, later amended to include religious hatred. Nobody thought Sections 4 and 5, which in Part 1 of the Act make it an offence to cause harassment, alarm or distress by using threatening, abusive or insulting words or behaviour, would be used to criminalise the expression of opinion about religious belief. This bill therefore extends the scope of 29J to the whole of the Public Order Act, thus preventing the use of Sections 4 and 5 as a de facto blasphemy law, and applies Section 29 also to Section 127 of the Communications Act 2003 and Section 1 of the Malicious Communications Act 1988. In doing so, this bill would restore free speech as it applies to religion in England and Wales. It would stop the police, prosecutors and judges from creating a blasphemy law from legislation that was never passed for that purpose. It would send the strongest powerful message from this place, where political power legitimately and democratically resides, that this country will not tolerate intimidation, violence or censorship, that there will be no special treatment here for Islam, and there will be no surrender to the thugs who want to impose their beliefs and culture on the rest of us.
Yeah. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many in that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. John Cooper, Luke Evans, Richard Holden, Robert Jenrick, Rupert Lowe, Rebecca Paul, Jack Rankin, Alex Shelbrook, Bradley Thomas, Tom Tugendhat, Gavin Williamson and me.
Nick Timothy. So many bows, many bows. Bonus one.
Freedom of expression, religion or belief system bill.
Okay, so I think this is a good law. I've never understood how a country will allow immigrants to dictate to them, what their interests should be. I mean, if you say you're a secular state, a secular country, and then suddenly you allow immigrants to dictate to you what you should be, then something is wrong with you. The fact that it's taking so long for this bill to get to second reading still shows that something is wrong with you. I mean, UK, for crying out loud, you're a secular state. Secular means your law is supreme to every other law, every other religion, every other interest. Your law is supreme. You shouldn't allow any religion, any race, any isms, any whatever to become supreme or to be superior to it. Your secular laws, your rule of law must remain supreme to all laws. It's as simple as that.